By the end of today, they will all wish they'd never left me behind. My name is Margaret Sinclair. I'm 62 years old, and 3 months ago, my daughter went on a podcast and told the entire world that I was no longer part of her life. Not because I did something unforgivable, not because I hurt her, but because I had nothing left to offer. That's how she phrased it. I've watched that clip more times than I'd like to admit. I was a mother, a caregiver, a woman who gave her youth, her marriage, her whole heart to her children. And now I'm just a story to cut out, a narrative to edit for their Instagram feeds. I don't exist anymore, not to them. But here's what they didn't count on. I may be forgotten by them, but I will not disappear. Because what they did to me, what they erased, that story, I'm going to tell it myself. At 60, I wasn't weak. I wasn't confused or declining. I cooked for myself, read voraciously, walked 2 miles every morning. But somehow, in their eyes, I'd become something else. A burden, an inconvenience, a reminder of their own aging. It started with small things, missed calls. Alicia forgetting my birthday for the first time in her life. Daniel coming by only to drop off some documents for me to sign. No hug, no coffee, not even eye contact. Then came the conversation. Alicia sat across from me at my kitchen table, scrolling through her phone as she spoke. "Mom, we've been talking. Daniel and I, we just think it's better if you moved somewhere. Easier. With support." Support. As if I'd been asking for help. As if I was falling apart. I remember looking at her, my daughter, my baby girl, and not recognizing the tone in her voice. It wasn't cruel. It was cold, dismissive. I asked, "Are you saying I can't live alone?" She didn't answer right away. She just said, "It's not about can't. It's about what's best for everyone. Everyone except me." Daniel didn't even bother to show up for that talk. He just wired me the down payment for his small assisted living unit on the edge of town. I didn't argue, not because I agreed, but because I was afraid that if I pushed back, I'd lose them entirely. Funny how fear can make you polite, even while you're being exiled. So I packed my life into 12 boxes. Old photo albums, my wedding dishes, 2 quilts I'd sewn by hand. And I moved into apartment 3B of the Willow Creek residences, just outside town. No garden, no noise, no family, just me and the echoes of everything I used to be. I gave it time. I told myself they just needed space, that this was temporary, that they'd come around. The first week, I texted Alicia every morning, a photo of the sunrise outside my window, a message that read, "Thinking of you, hope you're okay." No reply. I called Daniel twice, straight to voicemail. I left him a message. "Hey honey, just wanted to hear your voice. Let me know if the kids are doing well." Nothing. By the 3rd week, I stopped texting daily, started writing messages in a notebook instead. Things I wanted to say but knew I wouldn't send. By the 2nd month, I stopped calling altogether. I sat in that small, clean apartment and watched other residents get visits from grandchildren, birthday balloons, little hugs that made your heart ache just watching. Mine stayed silent. On my 61st birthday, I baked my own carrot cake. It was always Alicia's favorite. I set 2 plates just in case someone showed up. I lit 2 candles. I waited all afternoon. By 6 p.m., I ate alone. The cake didn't taste like anything. I didn't even cry, because even my tears had given up. Later that night, I posted a photo of the cake on Facebook. No comments, no likes, not even a message from Alicia or Daniel. Just silence, as if I had been quietly deleted. I met Pele on a Tuesday. I remember because I just finished organizing the spice rack for the 3rd time that week. Anything to feel useful. He was sitting on the bench behind the building, feeding pigeons. Tall, dark-skinned, thin but proud. a kind of stillness in his eyes I recognized instantly. I nodded. He nodded back. The next day, I brought an extra tea from the dining room and offered it to him. He smiled, slow and warm. "You don't strike me as someone who drinks alone." We started talking. About nothing, really. Weather, books, the terrible coffee in the rec room. But slowly our talks deepened. Pelé told me he'd lost his wife, Mariana, 4 years ago, that they never had children, that silence was now his closest companion. I told him about Alicia and Daniel. I told him about the carrot cake. He didn't pity me. He didn't offer advice. He just listened. We met nearly every day after that. Sometimes we'd sit for hours without saying much. Other days, we'd laugh so hard the nurses peeked through the window, thinking something had happened. He started calling me Miss Maggie. I started calling him my favorite person who doesn't talk too much. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel invisible. One afternoon, Pelé pulled out his phone and showed me something. An Instagram post, Alicia's page. She was filming herself outside a luxury gym, ranting about drama queens in retirement homes who make everything about them. She never said my name, but the caption read, "Sometimes cutting ties is self-care, even with family." My photo, an old one from last Thanksgiving, was blurred in the background, but not enough. I was still recognizable. He looked at me gently. "You okay?" I said nothing. Inside, I felt something snap. Not anger, not yet. Something colder, like the first breath of winter air that lets you know. This is not a season. This is who they've become. It happened on a Wednesday, the kind of day that doesn't warn you before it shatters you. There was a knock on the door. Not a visit, not a neighbor, a courier. He handed me a manila envelope and asked for my signature. Inside, a legal document from Alicia's lawyer, a cease and desist. I was no longer allowed to visit her home, her events, her children's school. She accused me of emotional intrusion and online harassment. Online harassment? I hadn't posted anything except a photo of that carrot cake. I sat on the edge of my bed and read the letter 5 times. I checked the sender address, the signatures, the tone. It was real. And then I saw the second note, an email printed from Daniel, just one line. "Please respect her space. Don't escalate this further." Escalate? I hadn't even raised my voice. I sat there stunned. Then slowly, the humiliation sank in. Not disappointment, not anger, shame, not because I had done something wrong, but because I had believed I still mattered to them. I curled up on the bed like a child, and for the first time in decades, I sobbed the way I did when I lost my husband. Not because of grief, but because of the emptiness that follows when love evaporates without a trace. I didn't eat for 2 days. Pelé knocked on my door once. I didn't answer. He slid a small note under the door. It read, "You're still here, Miss Maggie. That counts for something." But I wasn't so sure, because in that moment, sitting on a floral bedspread in a room full of silence, I didn't feel alive. I felt erased. After the storm came the silence. Not peace, just absence. A flat, dull quiet that filled my days like dust settles in forgotten rooms. But somehow silence gives you choices. I could stay in that bed, or I could stand up. So one morning, I did. I made oatmeal. I opened the window. I watered the sad little plant on the windowsill that I had nearly let die. I started walking again, just 10 minutes around the building at first. I signed up to volunteer at the local food pantry, not because I wanted to save the world, but because I needed to feel human again. The first time someone said thank you to me, I cried in the storage room. I stopped calling Alicia, stopped checking Daniel's social media, stopped hoping, not out of anger, but because hope, when it keeps bruising the same part of you, becomes a form of harm. I wrote more, not for them, for me. Letters I'd never send, memories I didn't want to forget. Little things I noticed, how the sky changed at 6:30 p.m., how the lady at the front desk always hummed Aretha Franklin when she was in a good mood. Pele noticed the change. He smiled wider when I walked up. "Your steps sound different," he said once. I asked, "Better?" He nodded. "Real." For the first time in months, I started feeling like a person again. Not a mistake, not a ghost, just Maggie. And quietly, in corners they could no longer see, I began to rebuild myself. I never set out to be noticed, but when you begin to heal, people sense it, even those who once overlooked you. It started with a conversation at the food pantry. A young journalist, Kelsey Tran, was doing a local piece on elder volunteers. She asked if I'd be willing to share a bit about my life. I hesitated. I didn't want pity, but I said yes, if she promised to tell the truth. A week later, the piece ran in the community paper. The title, "Invisible No More, The Mother Who Refused to Be Forgotten." It wasn't sensational, just honest. She wrote about how I volunteered 5 days a week, how I was once a wife, a mother, a teacher, how I had been quietly pushed aside by the people I raised. I didn't use names. I didn't need to. But the response was unexpected. Old neighbors reached out. 2 women from my church sent flowers. Strangers sent letters that said things like, "You reminded me of my mother. I wish I had treated her better." And then, Alessia responded. She didn't call. She posted a video. Tearfully laughing, she said, "It's funny how people rewrite history for attention. Some folks love playing the victim." She didn't say my name, but again, she didn't need to. Daniel emailed me that same night. 3 lines. "This is getting out of hand. I hope you'll consider stopping this. It's not helping anyone." Helping who? I stared at his words. Then I looked at the faces in the letters I received. The people at the pantry. The women who sent messages saying, "Thank you for speaking what I couldn't." No, this wasn't about hurting anyone. This was about finally being seen. And if telling the truth made them squirm, maybe they should have lived differently. Pele passed away on a Thursday. No warning, no drama. He simply didn't show up on our usual bench that morning. By evening, the nurse told me he'd died in his sleep. I didn't cry right away, not out of strength. But because the grief was so sudden, so sharp, it numbed me. He had no family, no children, no visitors. Just me. A woman he met late in life who listened and brought him tea. At the small memorial held in the courtyard, a lawyer approached me. "Miss Margaret Sinclair?" "Yes, I have something for you. From Mr. Manuel Pele Alves." He handed me an envelope, thick and cream-colored. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Miss Maggie, you gave me laughter when I thought I'd used mine up. You listened when I was ready to disappear. I have no one else to leave this to, so I'm leaving it to the only person who reminded me I still mattered. Please use this for something that makes you feel alive again." Pele attached was a check, $8,400. His entire savings, I later learned. I held that check in both hands and wept, not for the money, but for the undeniable truth that someone saw me, chose me, trusted me to carry something forward. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed up writing, not letters this time, a plan, a way to preserve his kindness and my voice, not through bitterness, through memory, not to shame my children, but to tell a story that deserved to live, a story they tried to erase. I used the money the way Pele asked, not for a vacation, not for clothes or comfort. I hired a young documentary filmmaker named Sophia Leon, a quiet, perceptive woman with eyes that missed nothing. I told her, "I don't want drama. I don't want revenge. I just want to be remembered, truthfully." She said, Then let's begin where the forgetting started. We filmed in my apartment, walls stained by time, but filled with warmth, my hands shaking slightly as I cooked the carrot cake Alicia used to love. My closet, still holding the dress I wore to Daniel's wedding. Boxes of memories they left behind without a second glance. We visited the food pantry. She interviewed people I worked with, people who saw my worth every single day. We talked about Pelé, his bench, his letters, his absence. Sophia asked gentle questions. I gave raw answers. The film wasn't long, just 24 minutes, but it held decades. Not just mine, but thousands of other women like me. Women discarded when their usefulness ran out. Mothers turned into burdens. Human hearts edited out of other people's narratives. We called it the Living Memory Project. We hosted a small premiere at the local community center. I invited neighbors. Sophia invited a few people from the press. I sent invitations to Alicia and Daniel. I didn't expect them to come. They didn't. But others did. Nurses, volunteers, single mothers, a group of high school students who sat in the front row, eyes wide. When the credits rolled, there was no applause, just silence. The kind of silence that holds respect and truth. Later that week, something began to shift. Emails, messages, apologies from people who had quietly believed Alicia's version of events. And then, news broke online. Alicia lost 2 major sponsors. One cited misalignment with values. Daniel's name disappeared from the website of a local charity he sat on. He didn't post about it, he just vanished for a while. I didn't gloat, I didn't even smile. But I felt it, deep in my chest. Not vengeance, not justice, recognition. I didn't hear from Alicia or Daniel after the film. Not a call, not a message, but I saw the ripple. Alicia posted less, no more sponsored skincare routines or monologues about boundaries. Her comment sections filled with quiet questions. Is this the same woman from that documentary? I used to follow you. I can't anymore. She turned off the comments. Daniel stepped down from 2 boards. His name stopped appearing on community newsletters. Whispers replaced applause. None of it came from me. I never named them. I never accused. I simply existed, fully, without shame, without asking for permission. That was the revenge. Not rage, not lawsuits, but living well enough to dismantle their lies. Sometimes I sit in my little garden, the one I started with Sophia's help after the film. Tomatoes, basil, a patch of wild flowers that never behave. I drink my tea and think about Pelé, about my husband, about all the women who vanish slowly in their own families and never speak a word of it. But I did. And now, others do too. People send letters. They write, "You helped me confront my daughter. I saw myself in you. Thank you for showing me it's not my fault." The day I received a letter from a woman in Wisconsin who left her abusive adult son after watching my story, I cried for 2 hours, because that's the difference between revenge and reckoning. Revenge ends with your enemy's silence. Reckoning begins with your own voice. I used to think that being erased was the worst thing that could happen to someone. That silence was the same as death. But I was wrong. Because silence can be broken, and some erasures leave traces that never fully disappear. I stand now on my small back porch, the breeze moving through the garden I built with my own hands. Hands, they said, had nothing left to give. The same hands that wiped their tears, tied their shoelaces, made their birthday cakes. Now they plant wildflowers. Now they hold pens. Now they hold peace. I don't wait for calls anymore. I don't check for birthdays or holidays. I live. And if they ever think of me, if guilt ever whispers at the back of their polished lives, I hope they remember that I didn't fight back. I didn't scream, I didn't beg. I simply told the truth, out loud in front of the world. And that truth did more damage than any weapon ever could. But this story, it's not about what they lost. It's about what I found, myself. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there watching, someone who's sitting in silence right now, will hear my voice and remember that they are still here too. To every woman who has ever been made to feel invisible, your voice is still yours.